Unveiling the Mighty Congo, Historical Insights. The Congo River stretched across the heart of Africa like a dark, shimmering serpent, its waters carving a path through dense jungles, rolling savannas, and towering cliffs. It was the year 1415, and the river flowed as it always had, silent, ancient, alive with secrets. Its banks cradled a people whose lives were woven into its currents, their songs rising with the mist at dawn, their nets dipping into its depths for sustenance. Among them was a girl named Mbala, born to a fisherman's family in a village nestled where the river bent like an elbow, its waters slow and deep. She was 12, her skin kissed by the sun, her hands already rough from twisting palm fibers into nets. Her eyes, though, were her truest gift, sharp, curious, always searching the horizon for something she couldn't yet name. Mbala's village was one of many in the Kingdom of Congo, a realm that sprawled across the river's western reaches, its power rooted in the land and the people who tilled it. The king, Nzinga Nkuwu, ruled from Banza, Congo, a city of mud brick palaces and bustling markets where copper bracelets clinked against clay pots and traders haggled over salt and cloth. The river was their lifeline, a highway for canoes laden with goods, a mirror reflecting their gods. Mbala's father, Kofi, taught her its ways, how to read the ripples for fish, how to listen for the hum of approaching storms. "The river is our mother," he'd say, his voice low as he mended his nets by firelight. "She gives, she takes, she remembers." Life was steady then, a rhythm of seasons and stories. Mbala's mother, Nia, wove baskets so fine they fetched high prices at the market, while her older brother, Tembo, dreamed of joining the king's warriors, his spear already sharp from practice. The village elders gathered under a baobab tree, their voices weaving tales of the ancestors, how the first men emerged from the river's depths, how the spirits danced in its mists. Mbala loved these nights, the air thick with smoke and laughter, the stars winking through the canopy. She'd sit cross-legged, her chin in her hands, imagining herself as a griot one day, her words immortalizing her people. But the river carried more than fish and stories. One humid afternoon, as Mbala hauled a net with her father, a canoe glided into view longer than any she'd seen, its prow carved with a leopard's head. The man aboard was Lucani, a trader from the coast, his tunic stained with salt and sweat. He bore the news that silenced the village. Strangers had landed on the shores of the Atlantic, their skin pale as moonlight, their ships like floating villages. They called themselves Portuguese, seekers of wealth and alliances, and they wanted to meet the king. Mbala's father frowned, his hands stilling on the net. "The river has brought us many things," he muttered, "but never this."
Weeks later, the drums summoned the village to Banza, Congo. Mbala stood among the crowd, her bare feet sinking into the earth, as Nzinga Nkuwu emerged from his palace, his robes shimmering with cowrie shells. Lucani knelt before him, recounting the foreigners' rival, how their ships bristled with cannons, how their leader, a man named Diogo Cow, offered gifts of glass and steel. The king's face was unreadable, but his eyes gleamed with calculation. "They seek our copper, our gold," he said, his voice carrying over the murmurs. "We will meet them, but the river will decide their fate." Mbala watched as the king's son, Afonso, stepped forward, his chest puffed with youthful pride. At 18, he was eager to prove himself, his mind already racing with visions of power. The Portuguese arrived days later, their caravels anchoring where the river met the sea. Mbala hid among the reeds with Tembo, peering at the strangers, men with beards like tangled vines, their armor glinting in the sun. They brought mirrors that captured faces, cloth finer than any weave Nia could dream of, and a cross they said held their god. Nzinga Nkuwu accepted their gifts, but Mbala saw the hunger in their eyes, a shadow that made the river ripple uneasily. Years passed, and the Portuguese became a fixture, their traders paddling upriver in sleek boats, their priests preaching of a man nailed to wood. Afonso, now a man, grew fascinated by their ways. When Nzinga Nkuwu died in 1506, Afonso ascended, renaming himself Afonso I in the Christian fashion. Mbala, now 20, married Kwezi, a quiet trader who bartered salt along the river's tributaries. They built a home of mud and thatch. Their first child, a girl named Lika, was born as the kingdom shifted beneath Afonso's rule. Churches sprouted like mushrooms after rain, their bells clanging over the villages. Afonso sent letters to Portugal, begging for teachers and tools, dreaming of a Congo as grand as Europe. The river carried wealth. European goods flooded the markets, and Mbala's baskets fetched coins stamped with foreign kings. But the Portuguese wanted more. They demanded slaves and bodies to toil in lands across the sea. Afonso resisted, his faith warring with his duty, but the raids began anyway. One night, as Mbala rocked Lika to sleep, shouts pierced the darkness. Tembo, now a warrior, burst into their hut, his spear bloodied. "They've taken the eastern village," he gasped. "We fight, or we fall." Before dawn, he was gone, leading a band to strike back. Days later, word came. Tembo had been captured, chained, and dragged to a ship. Mbala's scream echoed over the river, her grief a stone in her chest.
She couldn't sit idle. With Kwezi's blessing, she sought Zuri, a griot whose voice could rouse the dead. Zuri was old, her hair silver, but her eyes burned with defiance. "The river mourns with us," she said, gathering rebels in a hidden grove. Mbala joined them, her hands trading nets for a dagger. They struck at night, torching Portuguese outposts and freeing captives from bamboo cages. The river hid their canoes, its currents swallowing the cries of their enemies. Once, as they paddled back under a moonless sky, Mbala swore she saw Tembo's face in the water, a fleeting vision, a promise unkept. Decades rolled by and Mbala grew gray, her hands trembling as she taught Lika's children the old songs. Afonso died in 1543, his dreams of a Christian Congo crumbling under Portuguese greed. The kingdom fractured, and its villages preyed on slavers and rival chiefs. The river flowed on, its banks scarred by loss, but its spirit unbroken. Mbala died at 60, her body laid in a canoe and set adrift, as was the custom. Her last breath was a prayer that the river would remember. Centuries later, in 1876, the Congo River roared under a new shadow. Henry Morton Stanley, a Welshman with a mapmaker's zeal, hacked through its jungles, his boats battling rapids and fever. He called it a savage beauty, his journals painting it as a prize for Europe. King Leopold II of Belgium read those words and saw gold not in metal, but in rubber and ivory. By 1885, he claimed the Congo as his and own, naming it the Congo Free State. The river became a highway of horror, its waters ferrying steamboats laden with chained men, their backs lashed for quotas they'd never meet. In a village near Stanley Falls, a boy named Juma was born in 1890. His mother was a descendant of Mbala's line. He grew up hauling rubber under Belgian whips, his hands bleeding, his father lost to an overseer's bullet. The river was no longer a mother, but a witness to atrocities, severed hands tossed into its depths, villages burned for defiance. Juma escaped at 16, fleeing into the forest with a stolen machete. He found others runaways, rebels, survivors, and they built a camp where the river forked, its waters shielding them from patrols. They raided plantations, and their cries an echo of Zuri's songs, their blades carving freedom from despair. Leopold's reign ended in 1908, his crimes exposed, but the Congo remained a colonial pawn, its riches siphoned by Belgium. Juma lived to see the 20th century unfold, his hair whitening as he told his grandchildren of the river's wrath. "It never forgets," he'd say, pointing to its churning surface. "It waits." He died in 1945, his body buried under a mango tree, and the rivers hum his lullaby.
The year 1955 brought a new voice, Patrice Lumumba, a postal clerk turned firebrand, born near the river's upper reaches. He was Juma's kin, though he didn't know it, the blood of Mbala and Zuri in his veins. Patrice stood in Kinshasa's dusty streets, his words a thunderclap, "The Congo is ours." The river carried his speeches, its currents amplifying his dream of independence. On June 30, 1960, that dream became reality, the Belgian flag lowered, and the Congolese one raised. Patrice wept as he spoke, his vision of unity bright as the sun. But freedom was fragile. Months later, in 1961, Patrice was dead, murdered by enemies foreign and domestic, his body dissolved in acid. The river mourned, its waters flooding the banks, but it didn't stop flowing. The Congo stumbled through chaos, wars, dictators, poverty, but its people endured. Kinshasa grew into a metropolis, its skyline piercing the haze, while the river's basin teemed with life, gorillas in misty forests, hippos wallowing in shallows, fish darting through its depths. Today, in 2025, the Congo River stretches, as it always has, a titan of nature and memory. Its banks bustle with fishermen like Kofi, weavers like Nia, rebels like Zuri, and dreamers like Patrice. A young girl, Amina, stands where Mbala once did, her tablet glowing with stories of the past. She's 16, her eyes sharp, her dreams vast. The river whispers to her of kings and chains, of blood and hope. She listens, her fingers tracing its edge, knowing it's more than water. It's a saga, a soul, a promise. As night falls, the Congo glimmers under a sky of stars, its currents weaving past into the present. Mbala Espinentrine lingers in its ripples, Tembo's in its depths, Juma's in its roar, Patrice's in its flow. The river is eternal, its history unveiled not as a relic, but as a living thread. Amina smiles, her voice joining the wind. We are the Congo. We rise,